The sound of tearing fabric cut through the cramped briefing room like a combat knife through canvas. Lieutenant Brad Steele, a 6'4" mountain of SEAL Team 6 muscle, gripped Sergeant Rachel Cooper's medical blouse with both hands and ripped it from collar to chest. The torn fabric hit the concrete floor with a soft thud that somehow echoed louder than gunfire in the sudden silence. "I don't need a babysitter!" His voice thundered through the room, spit flying from his lips as his face twisted with rage. Rachel stood frozen, her 5'2" frame dwarfed by the towering operator, her trembling hands clutching the medical kit against her chest like a shield that couldn't protect her from what was happening. 12. SEAL operators formed a circle around her, their eyes carrying the cold calculation of predators sizing up prey. One of them, a beast of a man with a skull tattoo crawling up his neck, kicked a metal chair across the room. It crashed against the wall inches from Rachel's head, the clang reverberating through her bones. "Listen up, Band-Aid girl." Steele stepped closer, his breath reeking of tobacco and last night's whiskey washing over her face. "Tomorrow, we're running patrol through Sector 7, Taliban country. You'll be dead in the first 5 minutes, and I'm not letting any of my boys risk their lives trying to save some worthless medic who can't even look a real warrior in the eye." His massive hand shot out, grabbing her collar and lifting her clean off the ground, her boots dangling helplessly as she struggled to breathe. Rachel didn't cry out, didn't beg. Her small brown eyes locked onto his, steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. But within 24 hours, this same man would be lying beneath her hands with his intestines spilling onto Afghan dirt, begging her to save his life. Steele released his grip, and Rachel dropped to the floor, her knees hitting concrete with a painful crack. She straightened slowly, adjusting what remained of her torn uniform with hands that refused to stop shaking. The door burst open, and Colonel Sarah Winters strode in, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. The torn fabric on the floor, Rachel's disheveled state, the SEALs standing in a predatory circle. "What the hell is going on here?" Her voice cut through the testosterone-thick air like a blade. Steele straightened, not bothering to hide his contempt. "Colonel, we need a real combat medic, not this." He gestured dismissively at Rachel. "This liability." Winter's jaw tightened, her gaze moving from Steele to Rachel, who stood silent, blood trickling from where her knees had hit the floor. "Sergeant Cooper stays." "That's a direct order, Lieutenant." The SEALs erupted in angry mutters. One of them, barely out of training by the look of his fresh-faced arrogance, grabbed a water bottle and hurled it against the wall near Rachel's head. Water exploded across the concrete, droplets hitting her face like shrapnel. "This is bullshit," he shouted. "We don't babysit in the teams." Winters took a step forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "One more outburst, and you'll be explaining to Admiral Morrison why his premier team can't follow simple orders. Dismissed." The SEALs filed out, each one making sure to bump Rachel's shoulder as they passed. Steele was last, pausing to lean down, his lips inches from her ear. "You better pray to whatever God you believe in that tomorrow goes smooth. Because if it doesn't, if one of my boys gets hurt because of you." He let the threat hang in the air, then straightened and walked out, leaving Rachel alone with the colonel. Winters waited until the door closed before speaking. "I know what they did was wrong, Sergeant, but I need you on this mission. Can you handle it?" Rachel finally found her voice, quiet but steady. "Yes, ma'am. I can handle it." Winters studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Get yourself cleaned up. Briefings at those 600 hours." As the colonel left, Rachel bent to pick up the torn pieces of her uniform, her hands finally steady. She'd been through worse, much worse. The memory hit her like a physical blow as she folded the torn fabric. Another time, another place, but the same dismissive voices. Send a real medic, not some girl playing soldier. That had been 3 years ago, in a place that didn't officially exist during a mission that never happened. She pushed the memory down, locked it away with all the others. There would be time for memories later. Right now, she had gear to prep. The medical supply room was her sanctuary, the one place in forward operating base Chapman where she could work without eyes judging her every move. She laid out her tactical medical kit on the metal table, running through each component with practiced precision. The hemostatic agents designed to stop arterial bleeding in seconds. The emergency surgical instruments, each one selected through brutal experience. The synthetic blood substitutes that cost 10 times their civilian equivalents, but could mean the difference between a flag-draped coffin and a soldier going home. Her fingers moved with an efficiency that spoke of countless hours under fire, of decisions made when seconds meant lives. That's not standard issue. The voice made her freeze. Petty Officer Marcus Williams, the SEAL team's senior corpsman, stood in the doorway. Unlike the others, his tone held curiosity rather than contempt. He'd been watching her work, noting the way she arranged her supplies, not by the book, but by the harsh lessons of combat. Rachel's hands resumed their movement, checking the arterial clamps. Some of it isn't. She kept her voice neutral, professional. Doc Williams stepped closer, his experienced eyes taking in details others had missed. The way she tested each tourniquet with a specific twisting motion, the extra surgical supplies tucked into spaces a regular medic wouldn't think to use, the small vial of ketamine hidden among the morphine, useful for certain types of field surgery most medics never attempted. That scar on your arm, he said quietly, having noticed it when her sleeve rode up. That's not from an IED. Too precise. Looks like it came from a K-bar. Rachel pulled her sleeve down, but not before he caught a glimpse of more scars. A roadmap of violence written across her skin. Training accident, she said, the lie smooth and practiced. Williams didn't push, but she could see the questions in his eyes. Good. Let him wonder. Tomorrow, when the bullets started flying, questions would be the least of anyone's concerns. The afternoon brought mandatory range time, and the SEALs made sure Rachel was last in line. They took their positions with the casual arrogance of elite warriors, their shots grouping tight at 300 meters. Watch and learn how real operators shoot, Steele called out, his rounds punching perfect holes in the center mass of his target. The others followed suit, their marksmanship a display of years of training and countless rounds downrange. They were good, very good, professional killers at the peak of their craft. When Rachel's turn came, one of the younger SEALs, Rodriguez's swim buddy, Jenkins, accidentally kicked her ammo can, sending rounds scattering across the concrete. Oops, he said with a grin that held all the warmth of a predator's smile. Butterfingers. The range master, a grizzled army sergeant who had seen too much to care about inter-service drama, just shook his head and waited. Rachel knelt, collecting the scattered ammunition with the same methodical patience she'd shown all day. She loaded her magazine, movement smooth and economical, then took her position. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, an old friend she hadn't visited in too long. She settled into her stance, and something shifted in the air. The SEAL's laughter died as they watched her body naturally flow into a shooting position that screamed of advanced training. Her breathing slowed, the world narrowing to the front sight post and the target beyond. 5 shots, 5 seconds. The range master called ceasefire and ran the target back. 5 holes so tightly grouped, they looked like a single ragged wound, all headshots at 300 meters. The silence stretched until Jenkins muttered, "Lucky shots." Anyone can get lucky once. But Steele wasn't looking at the target. He was staring at Rachel's stance, at the way she'd controlled the rifle's recoil, at shooting fundamentals that took years to perfect. His eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, she'd already cleared her weapon and stepped back, face as blank as morning fog. That evening, the mess hall was its usual chaos of loud voices and clattering trays. Rachel found an empty table in the corner, preferring solitude to the inevitable confrontation that would come from sitting with others. She'd barely started eating when someone upended a bottle of hot sauce over her tray, red liquid pooling like blood across her food. "Spice it up, sweetheart," Lance Corporal Brooks laughed, high-fiving another SEAL as they walked past. "Got to toughen up that soft stomach for tomorrow." A napkin appeared in her peripheral vision. Corporal Lisa Park, one of the few other women on base, slid it across the table before sitting down, uninvited. "They're assholes," Lisa said quietly, watching the SEALs congregate at their usual table like wolves around a kill. "What they're doing isn't right." Rachel wiped the sauce from her tray, salvaging what she could of her meal. "I've had worse." The words came out flat, carrying weight that made Lisa's eyes widen slightly. "Still doesn't make it right," Lisa insisted, then leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but I've heard things about you. Good things." Rachel's hand stilled on her fork. "You've got the wrong person." Lisa shook her head. "Building 3 basement. There's something there you should see if you need ammunition against them. Not bullets, but the other kind." She stood quickly, as if afraid of being seen talking too long with the pariah. "Just be careful tomorrow. Some of us know you deserve better than this." As Lisa walked away, Rachel noticed Master Chief Rodriguez watching from across the room. The senior enlisted SEAL's expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a calculating look she'd seen before. He was piecing something together, connecting dots others had missed. Good. Let him wonder too. Tomorrow would answer everyone's questions, whether they wanted those answers or not. Rachel's hands trembled as she repacked her advanced tactical medical kit, containing military-grade hemostatic agents and emergency surgical instruments originally developed for Special Operations Combat Medicine. The specialized trauma supplies, including arterial clamps and synthetic blood substitutes, cost over 10 times civilian equivalents, but could mean the difference between life and death in the field. Each component had been selected through years of battlefield experience, designed to work in the harshest combat conditions imaginable. The pre-dawn darkness wrapped around FOB Chapman like a burial shroud as Rachel made her way to the briefing room. 05:45 hours, 15 minutes early. But the SEALs were already there, their faces painted with the casual confidence of men who'd never met a situation they couldn't shoot their way out of. She took a seat in the back, trying to become invisible. But Steele's voice cut through her attempt at anonymity. "Well, look who showed up. Thought you might have developed a sudden case of combat stress." The laughter was cruel, predatory. One of the SEALs, Petty Officer Second Class Thompson, made a show of checking his medical pouch. "Got my own Band-Aids, Lieutenant. We good to leave her behind?" Colonel Winters entered before Steele could respond, her presence immediately commanding attention. The briefing was straightforward. A presence patrol through Sector 7, showing the flag in an area where Taliban influence had been growing. Simple in theory, deadly in practice. The route would take them through the Tangi Valley, a narrow corridor flanked by high ground on both sides. Perfect ambush country. As Winters outlined the mission, Rachel found herself studying the terrain map with growing unease. Something about the patrol route nagged at her, a familiarity that she couldn't quite place. "Questions?" Winters asked as the briefing concluded. Rachel raised her hand, earning groans from the SEALs. "Ma'am, the route takes us through a natural choke point at grid reference 38, Romeo Quebec Mike. Shouldn't we consider? Steele cut her off with a bark of laughter. The medic wants to play tactician now. Stick to your lane, Cooper. Leave the operational planning to the operators. The other SEALs joined in the mockery, but Rachel noticed Doc Williams and Master Chief Rodriguez exchange glances. They'd seen the same thing she had. The route was dangerous, predictable, but Steele's ego wouldn't allow him to consider input from someone he'd already dismissed as worthless. The convoy consisted of 4 up-armored Humvees, and surprise, surprise, Rachel was assigned to the last vehicle, tail end Charlie, the most vulnerable position. She climbed in to find herself surrounded by 3 of Steele's most vocal supporters, including Jenkins, who greeted her with a sneer. Try not to puke when the shooting starts, princess. Blood's a lot different when it's not in your nice, clean medical textbooks. Rachel secured her gear and checked her rifle, movements automatic after years of practice. As she did, something small and white caught her eye, a folded paper tucked into her kit. Lisa's note. She palmed it, reading quickly. Building 3 basement, if you need proof. Proof of what? She tucked the note away as the convoy began to roll. The streets of the local village blurred past, women in burqas pulling children inside, men watching with expressions that could mean anything or nothing. The radio chatter was professional but tense. Everyone felt it, that electric sensation before the storm. Rachel found herself unconsciously checking her equipment again, fingers finding the hidden supplies Doc Williams had noticed. The ketamine, the extra surgical kit, the tools for procedures most medics never attempted, because most medics hadn't been where she'd been, hadn't learned from who she'd learned from. Sector 7 in 5 mics, the lead vehicle reported. The Tangi Valley opened before them like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. High ground on both sides, boulder fields perfect for concealing fighters, and that damn choke point coming up fast. Rachel keyed her radio, tried once more. Red 1, this is Red 4. Recommend we... Red 4, maintain radio discipline. Steele's voice crackled back, dripping with disdain. Save the chatter for calling in our position when you inevitably freeze up. Jenkins laughed. LT's got your number, Doc. Maybe when we get back, you can transfer to somewhere safer. I hear the dining facility needs... The world exploded. The IED detonated directly under the second vehicle, lifting the multi-ton Humvee into the air like a toy. It came down on its side, flames already licking at the fuel tank. Then, the mountains erupted with small arms fire, the distinctive crack of AK-47s mixing with the whoosh of RPGs. Contact! Contact! 360 degrees! The radio exploded with voices. As Rachel's training took over, she was out of the vehicle before conscious thought caught up. Medical kit in hand, rifle slung, moving toward the destroyed Humvee as bullets snapped past her head like angry hornets. Inside the burning vehicle, she could see movement. Someone was alive. The SEALs were returning fire, their training evident in the disciplined volleys, but they were pinned down. Another RPG streaked across the valley, impacting near the lead vehicle. This wasn't a harassment attack. This was a deliberate, well-planned ambush. Rachel reached the overturned Humvee, the heat from the flames searing her face. 2 SEALs were trapped inside, one unconscious, the other screaming as flames licked at his legs. Without hesitation, she dove through the twisted doorframe. The heat was overwhelming, smoke filling her lungs as she grabbed the conscious SEAL, Peterson, her mind supplied through the chaos. She dragged him out, his screams piercing through the gunfire, then dove back for the unconscious one. The flames were spreading, ammunition starting to cook off. She grabbed the second man under the arms and pulled with strength, born of desperation and something more, something earned in places whose names were classified. As she cleared the vehicle, it exploded, the concussion throwing her forward. She covered the wounded with her body as shrapnel whistled overhead. "Medic!" The cry came from the lead vehicle, then another from the third. Everyone was taking casualties. Rachel looked at the two men she'd pulled from the burning Humvee. Peterson had second-degree burns on his legs, but would live. The other, Kowalski, was bleeding from a head wound, but breathing. She made the combat medic's impossible choice and moved toward the loudest screams. Her movement pattern was unlike any medic the SEALs had seen. She didn't run in a straight line, but flowed from cover to cover, timing her movements with the enemy's fire patterns. When she reached the lead vehicle, she found exactly what she'd feared. Steel was down. The RPG had detonated against the vehicle's armor, and while it hadn't penetrated, the spalling had done its work. Steel lay half out of the commander's hatch, his abdomen torn open, intestines spilling out like grotesque party streamers. His eyes, which hours ago had looked at her with such contempt, now held only terror and pain. "Help me!" he gasped, blood frothing from his lips. "Please!" Rachel's hands moved without hesitation, cutting away his gear to assess the damage. It was bad. Catastrophically bad. The kind of wound that killed men while their buddies watched helplessly. But Rachel had seen worse, had fixed worse in places where failure meant more than one death, where the mission depended on keeping key personnel alive against all odds. "Red 4, what's your status?" Doc Williams' voice crackled through her earpiece. He was pinned down near the third vehicle, treating his own casualties. "Red 4 has multiple Category A casualties," she responded, using the medical terminology for those who needed immediate surgery or would die. "Need you to maintain your position. I've got this, Cooper. He needs a surgeon, not a—" Williams's transmission cut off as another explosion rocked the valley. The Taliban were pressing their attack, trying to overrun the convoy. Time was running out, was running. Rachel made her decision. From her kit, she pulled supplies no regular medic carried. The ketamine went in first, enough to take the edge off, but not enough to knock Steele out completely. She needed him conscious, needed him fighting to live. "Listen to me," she said, her voice cutting through his panic. "This is going to hurt like nothing you've ever felt, but you're going to live. Do you understand? You are going to live." Her hands worked with a speed and precision that spoke of darker places, harder choices. She packed the wound, clamping bleeders with an expertise that went beyond standard combat medicine. When she sutured the intestines, a procedure that should have been impossible under fire, her hands never trembled despite the bullets impacting inches away. But the enemy fire was intensifying. RPGs were bracketing their position, and the SEALs were running low on ammunition. They needed support, and they needed it now. That's when Rachel did something that would later be classified in the after-action report. She switched her radio to a frequency she shouldn't have known, using call signs that weren't supposed to exist. "Firehawk 6, this is Ghost 71. Troops in contact. Danger close fire mission. Grid 38, Romeo, Quebec, Mike 4521. Say again. Danger close. Friendlies marked by IR strobes. Time on target. Now, now, now." The radio went silent. Then a voice, confused but professional. "Ghost 71, authenticate Echo Charlie." Without missing a beat, while still working on Steele's wounds, Rachel rattled off an authentication code that had been burned into her memory 3 years ago. Another pause, then, "Ghost 71, Firehawk 6, rounds inbound, 30 seconds. Get your people down. All red elements, take cover." Rachel broadcast on the tactical net. "Artillery inbound, danger close." She threw herself over Steele as the world turned to thunder and flame. The barrage was precisely placed, walking up the ridge lines where the Taliban fighters had positioned themselves. Each round landed exactly where it would do the most damage to the enemy while avoiding the convoy. It was the kind of fire direction that took years to master, the kind that came from calling in strikes while bullets whined overhead and friends died around you. Seeing Rachel endure this treatment in silence, knowing she has to prove herself not with words but actions, what would you do in her position? Would you fight back? Or wait for the right moment? Drop a comment below with your thoughts because sometimes the hardest battles are fought before the real enemy even appears. Now watch what happens when their convoy enters the kill zone. As the convoy entered hostile territory, Rachel's tactical tablet displayed real-time satellite imagery through military-grade encrypted communication systems designed for special operations intelligence gathering. The ruggedized device, capable of surviving IED blasts and extreme temperatures, provided battlefield awareness typically reserved for command elements. Its advanced processor could calculate artillery coordinates and maintain secure uplink even under heavy electronic warfare conditions, features that would prove critical in the ambush ahead. The artillery had broken the ambush, but the fight wasn't over. Taliban fighters, stunned but not defeated, began to regroup for another assault. Rachel could hear their commanders shouting in Pashto, trying to rally their forces. She understood every word, another skill that wasn't in her official file. They were planning to rush the convoy, accepting casualties to overrun the Americans. But first, she had to finish saving Steele. Working with one hand while firing her M4 with the other, she completed the field surgery that should have been impossible. Steele's intestines were back inside, held in place by sutures that would make textbook surgeons weep with envy. The bleeding was controlled, his vitals stabilizing. He would live if they could get out of this valley. Ghost 71, Firehawk 6, second mission ready. Call the ball. The artillery was ready for another strike, but Rachel could see the problem. The Taliban were too close now. Danger close had become troops in contact. Any artillery now would be as likely to kill Americans as enemies. Firehawk 6, Ghost 71, negative on second mission. Friendlies and enemies intermingled. We're going to have to do this the hard way. She switched frequencies again. Dust off 33, Ghost 71. I need immediate medevac at Grid 38, Romeo Quebec Mike, 4521. Multiple Category A casualties. Hot LZ. How copy? The medical evacuation pilot's voice came back, tense but determined. Ghost 71, dust off 33. Roger on Hot LZ, ETA 8 mics. Can you hold 8 minutes in a firefight? 8 minutes was a lifetime, several lifetimes. Rachel looked around at the convoy situation. Half the SEALs were wounded, ammunition was running low, and the Taliban were pressing closer. They wouldn't last 8 minutes unless something changed. That's when Master Chief Rodriguez appeared at her side, blood streaming from a graze on his temple. Cooper, he said, and there was something different in his voice now. Respect. That fire mission was textbook. Where the hell did you... His question was cut off by the distinctive crack of a Dragunov sniper rifle. A SEAL in the third vehicle crumpled. Sniper, 2 o'clock, approximately 400 meters. Someone called out. Rachel was already moving. She grabbed the nearest rifle with a scope, an M110 semi-automatic sniper system, and found a position. Through the scope, she could see the muzzle flash from the Taliban sniper's hide. The shot would be difficult. Uphill, through smoke, with wind she could feel but not accurately measure. But she'd made harder shots in worse conditions when more than just her life depended on it. She took a breath, let half out, and squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and 400 meters away, the Taliban sniper slumped over his weapon. Jesus Christ, Jenkins breathed. He'd been watching, had seen the shot that most trained snipers would have found challenging. That was... But there was no time for amazement. The Taliban were making their final push, fighters streaming down from the ridgelines in a human wave assault. This was it. Do or die time. Rachel made a choice that would haunt her dreams, but save lives. She pulled out her tactical tablet again, fingers flying over the screen. All red elements, she broadcast. Marking enemy positions with IR laser, continuous wave. Keep your heads down. From her kit, she produced an infrared laser designator, another piece of equipment no normal medic would carry. She began painting Taliban positions, the invisible beam marking targets for something the enemy wouldn't see coming. High above, an AC-130 gunship that had been loitering outside the operations area received new targeting data. The pilot's voice crackled through her earpiece. Ghost 71, Spooky 41, has your sparkle, cleared hot. Rachel looked at the advancing Taliban, at her wounded comrades, at Steele, who was still conscious enough to stare at her with something approaching awe. Spooky 41, Ghost 71, cleared hot, bring the rain. The night turned to day as the gunship's weapons opened up. The 25mm Gatling gun sounded like God clearing his throat, followed by the steady thump of the 40mm Bofors cannon. Each burst was precisely placed, following Rachel's laser designator as she walked it through the Taliban positions. The human wave assault disintegrated under the overwhelming firepower. Fighters who moments before had been charging now scrambling for cover that didn't exist. Dust-off 33, 1 minute out. The medevac helicopter's rotors became audible over the gunfire, but landing would still be dangerous. The LZ was hot, and Taliban fighters were still taking shots from covered positions. That's when the SEALs proved why they were elite. Wounded or not, they formed a perimeter, laying down suppressing fire with the disciplined precision of men who'd done this 100 times before. And in the center of it all was Rachel, still working on casualties, still calling in fire support, still doing the impossible. The Black Hawk touched down in a tornado of dust and debris. Rachel and Doc Williams supervised the loading of casualties, prioritizing based on wounds. Steele went first. Despite everything, his injuries were the most life-threatening. As they loaded him, he grabbed Rachel's arm with surprising strength. "Cooper," he gasped through the pain. "I'm sorry. I didn't know, didn't understand." She met his eyes, and for the first time since this ordeal began, allowed a hint of emotion to show. "Save your strength, Lieutenant. You can apologize properly when you're not holding your guts in." But there was no heat in her words, and Steele managed what might have been a smile before the morphine pulled him under. More helicopters arrived, Apaches providing cover, additional Blackhawks for the walking wounded and equipment. As they lifted off, Rachel finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. Her hands were covered in blood. Steele's, Peterson's, her own from cuts she hadn't noticed. Her uniform was torn and burned, equipment scattered or expended. But they were alive, all of them, even the ones who had tried to break her. Jenkins sat across from her in the Black Hawk, staring with an expression caught between awe and shame. "That frequency you used," he said, having to shout over the rotors. "Those call signs, Ghost 71, that's—" He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish the thought. "That's classified," Rachel finished for him, her voice carrying despite the noise. "And it's going to stay that way." But Jenkins wasn't done. "The way you moved, the shooting, the medical procedures, no medic can do that. No regular medic." He paused, swallowing hard. "Who are you, really?" Rachel looked out the window at the Afghan mountains falling away below them, at the pillar of smoke still rising from the ambush site. She thought about the note in her pocket, about Building 3's basement, about secrets that were better left buried. But these men had bled beside her now. They'd earned a piece of the truth. "I'm someone who made a promise," she said finally. To always bring everyone home, no matter what it cost. The rest of the flight passed in silence, each man lost in their own thoughts. They had gone into that valley with a medic they had despised, tried to break, treated as less than human. They were coming out owing their lives to someone who'd proven herself more warrior than any of them had imagined. But the full truth was still hidden, still protected by classifications and need to know. The mystery of Ghost 71 would haunt them. But the evidence was clear. Rachel Cooper was no ordinary medic. She never had been. At the field hospital, controlled chaos reigned as doctors and nurses swarmed over the casualties. Rachel supervised the handoff, providing detailed reports on each patient's condition and the interventions she'd performed. The receiving surgeon, a major with 20 years of experience, listened with growing amazement. You performed a bowel repair under fire with basic field equipment. He examined Steele's sutures, shaking his head. This is work I'd expect from a trauma surgeon, not a field medic. Where did you train? Here and there, Rachel replied, deflecting as she always did. He needs a full X-lap, but he'll make it. The repair will hold. The major stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll make sure the surgical team knows they're following up on expert work. As he walked away, Rachel heard him mutter to a colleague, That's not field medicine. That's art. But she was already moving, checking on the other casualties, ensuring each one was stable. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Her hands had finally begun to shake, not from fear, but from the delayed reaction of a body pushed beyond its limits. Sergeant Cooper. The voice belonged to Colonel Winters, who'd arrived at the hospital as soon as word of the ambush reached the FOB. I need to speak with you privately. Rachel followed her to an empty office, noting the folder in the colonel's hands. Her stomach tightened. How much did Winters know? How much had been reported? The colonel closed the door and turned to face her, expression unreadable. I've been receiving some interesting radio transcripts, she began. Authentication codes that shouldn't exist. Call signs that were supposedly retired 3 years ago. And a certain AC-130 crew that's very curious about who exactly was directing their fire with such precision. Rachel remained silent. Sometimes the best defense was no defense at all. Winters continued. I also have 12 SEALs who owe their lives to a medic they tried to destroy. Men who are now telling anyone who will listen about abilities that go far beyond medical training. She opened the folder, revealing a document marked with classification stamps Rachel recognized all too well. So, I did some digging, made some calls to people who don't officially exist. Imagine my surprise when they confirmed that Ghost 71 was not only real, but was listed as KIA 3 years ago. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Finally, Rachel spoke. I was told my past was buried, that I could start over. Winter's expression softened slightly. It was, but actions like today have a way of resurrecting the dead. The question now is what we do about it. She closed the folder, seeming to come to a decision. For now, nothing. The after-action report will reflect exemplary performance by a combat medic under fire. The unusual aspects will be attributed to the fog of war. But Rachel, she used her first name for the first time. The SEALs know. They may not know the details, but they know you're not what you appear. That secret's out. Rachel nodded, exhaustion making her shoulders sag. I understand, ma'am. I'll put in for a transfer. You'll do no such thing, Winters interrupted. Do you know what those men are saying? Steele woke up during surgery prep. His first words were asking if you were okay. Jenkins is writing you up for a Silver Star. Rodriguez wants you assigned permanently to their team. She paused, letting that sink in. You've gone from pariah to patron saint in one firefight. Transfers are the last thing on anyone's mind. A knock on the door interrupted them. Come, Winters called. Doc Williams entered, still in his blood-stained gear. "Sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but Sergeant Cooper needs to know. Steele's out of surgery. He's stable, asking to see her when she has a chance." He paused, looking at Rachel with something approaching reverence. "The surgeon said your field repair saved his life. Another 10 minutes and—" He shook his head. "Anyway, thought you should know." After he left, Winters stood. "Get some rest, Sergeant. That's an order. We'll figure out the rest later." But as Rachel turned to leave, the colonel's voice stopped her. "One more thing. Building 3's basement. Whatever's there, whatever secret someone wanted you to find, be careful. Some stones are better left unturned." Rachel's hand found the note in her pocket. How did Winters know? But the colonel was already dismissing her, the conversation over. The mystery deepened, but exhaustion was winning. She needed sleep, needed to process everything that had happened. Tomorrow there would be questions, investigations, reports. But tonight, she'd saved them all. The ones who'd hated her, humiliated her, tried to break her. She'd save them anyway, because that's what warriors did. Not for glory or recognition, but because it was right. As she walked through the hospital corridor doors, she noticed the looks. Word had spread with the speed only military gossip could achieve. Conversation stopped as she passed, eyes following her with mixtures of awe, curiosity, and respect. The transformation was complete, from despised outsider to mysterious savior. But at what cost? Her carefully constructed new life was cracking, the past seeping through like blood through bandages. Ghost 71 was supposed to be dead. Rachel Cooper was supposed to be nobody special. Now both lies were exposed, and she didn't know which identity to claim. The barracks were quiet at Joe 300 hours, when Rachel finally made her way back from the hospital. Her body moved on autopilot, muscle memory navigating the darkened paths of FOB Chapman, while her mind wrestled with the day's events. She'd showered twice at the hospital, but she could still smell the copper tang of blood, still feel the heat of the burning Humvee on her skin. Her hands, steady as granite during the firefight, now trembled with exhaustion as she reached for her door. "Sergeant Cooper!" The voice from the shadows made her spin, instinct dropping her into a combat stance before recognition kicked in. Master Chief Rodriguez stepped into the dim light, his arm in a sling from the graze he had taken. "Easy. Just wanted to talk." He held up his good hand in a peaceful gesture. "Figured you'd be coming back about now. Hospital finally kick you out?" Rachel straightened, forcing her body to relax. "Something like that." Her voice was hoarse from shouting over gunfire and rotors. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, and she could see him cataloging details. The way she'd moved when startled, the positioning of her feet, the hand that had automatically reached for a weapon she wasn't carrying. "I knew a ghost once," he said quietly. "Different number. We were in Ramadi together, 07. Watched him call in danger close air support while dragging 2 Marines to safety. Same precision you showed today. Same impossible calm under fire." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "They told us he died in a training accident 3 years ago. All the ghosts did. Whole unit wiped out in one bad night." Rachel kept her expression neutral, but her pulse quickened. How much did he know? How much was he guessing? "Training accidents happen," she said, the words ash in her mouth. "Yeah, they do." Rodriguez shifted his weight, grimacing at some pain that the movement caused. "Funny thing, though. The accident happened in a place that doesn't exist during a mission that never occurred, and every ghost was supposedly killed, except their bodies were never returned. Just empty coffins and folded flags. The night air hung heavy between them, thick with unspoken truths." Finally, Rodriguez sighed. I don't need the details. Hell, I probably don't have the clearance for them. But Steele's alive because of you. Peterson, Kowalski, half the team. They're breathing because you were there. That's all that matters to me. He started to turn away, then stopped. That basement you were told about, Building 3. Be careful. Some of us have been here long enough to notice patterns. People who go looking for certain answers sometimes find more than they bargained for. With that, he melted back into the shadows, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts and the weight of decisions yet to be made. She entered her quarters, closing the door on the night and its questions. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Steele's intestines spilling out, felt the heat of the burning vehicle, heard the whistle of incoming artillery she'd called danger close. And underneath it all, like a bass note thrumming through her bones, was the mystery of Building 3. At 600, a knock shattered what little rest she'd managed to find. She opened the door to find Jenkins standing there, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his usual cocky demeanor had been replaced by something raw and uncertain. Sergeant Cooper, Rachel, can I come in? The use of her first name was jarring after days of Band-Aid Girl and worse. She stepped aside, letting him enter. He stood awkwardly in the small space, struggling for words. I need to... Christ, this is hard. He ran a hand through his hair. I was the biggest asshole to you. We all were. I threw your gear, mocked you, made your life hell, and then you saved us. Saved me, even after everything. It's my job, Rachel said simply. But Jenkins shook his head violently. No, it's not. Your job was to provide medical support. What you did, the fire support, the surgical procedures, the way you fought. He met her eyes, and she saw something broken there. I've been in the teams for 5 years. I've seen some shit, but I've never seen anything like what you did yesterday. And I need to know why. Why save us after what we did to you? Rachel considered her answer carefully. These men dealt in a currency of violence and honor, of brotherhood forged in fire. They wouldn't understand mercy as weakness, but they might understand duty as strength. Because you were my team, she said finally. It doesn't matter if you accepted me or not. The moment I was assigned to your convoy, your lives became my responsibility. Everything else, the personal stuff, that's just noise when the bullets start flying. Jenkins stared at her, then slowly nodded. I'm putting you in for a Silver Star. Steele's recommending a Bronze Star with V device. Rodriguez wants to nominate you for the Distinguished Service Cross. He paused. It won't make up for how we treated you, but... I don't want medals, Rachel interrupted. I want to do my job without having to prove myself every damn day. The bitterness in her voice surprised them both. Jenkins flinched. Yeah, you deserve that, and you'll get it. Nobody who saw what you did yesterday will ever question your place again. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. The lieutenant wants to see you when you're ready. He's lucid, and he keeps asking for you. After Jenkins left, Rachel sat on her bunk, head in her hands. The medals would come with scrutiny, investigations, questions she couldn't answer without revealing truths that were meant to stay buried. But maybe that was inevitable now. Maybe Ghost 71 couldn't stay dead any longer. She made her decision. Building 3's basement. Whatever secrets it held, whatever Lisa had discovered, she needed to know. The past was clawing its way to the surface anyway. Better to face it on her own terms. Building 3 was one of the older structures on base, a concrete relic from the Soviet occupation that had been repurposed countless times. The basement was supposed to be storage, but Rachel found the door unlocked, the stairs leading down into darkness that seemed thicker than mere absence of light. She descended carefully, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The basement was larger than expected, extending well beyond the building's footprint. File cabinets lined one wall, their locks broken, contents rifled through. But it was the far wall that made her breath catch. Photographs. Dozens of them pinned to boards like some investigative journalist's conspiracy wall. And in every photo, operators she recognized, not by face, their features always obscured by balaclavas or shadow, but by stance, by gear, by the small details that separated elite warriors from merely excellent ones. Ghost operators, her brothers and sisters in arms, the ones who were supposed to have died with her. "I knew you'd come." Lisa's voice from the shadows didn't surprise her. Somehow Rachel had expected this. The corporal stepped into the light, no longer the uncertain junior enlisted soldier from the mess hall. Her bearing was different now, professional, dangerous. "Sorry about the deception, but I needed to evaluate you first. Make sure you were who the files said you were." She gestured at the photographs. "Been collecting these for 2 years. Every time a mysterious operator shows up in after-action reports, every time impossible shots get made, or miraculous medical saves happen in places where they shouldn't. The ghosts aren't dead, are they?" Rachel examined the photos more closely. Kandahar, Helmand, operations in Syria and Iraq that never made the news. In each one, operators bearing the subtle hallmarks of ghost training. They'd scattered to the wind after that night, gone underground, become different people, but they couldn't stop being who they were. Warriors didn't just forget a lifetime of training because someone stamped "deceased" on their file. "Why?" Rachel asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because someone killed an entire unit of America's most elite operators and covered it up. Because the official story is bullshit. Because the truth needs to come out." Lisa moved to another board, this one covered with official documents, most heavily redacted. "Operation Twilight Hammer. Ring any bells?" The name hit Rachel like a physical blow. She was back there suddenly, in that compound in Pakistan where everything went wrong, where they'd been sent to die by someone who'd wanted the ghost unit erased. The mission that never happened in a place that didn't exist, where 24 of America's finest warriors were supposed to have perished. "We were betrayed," Rachel said, the words coming out harsh and ragged. "Sold out. The intel was deliberately false. The compound was a trap. They knew we were coming." She touched one of the photos, recognizing the stance of Ghost 14 despite the grainy quality. "We lost 8 that night. The rest of us, we were given a choice: die officially and disappear, or die for real. New identities, new lives. But we could never be ghosts again, never work together, never investigate what happened." In the aftermath, military medical review boards studied Rachel's field surgery using advanced diagnostic imaging systems originally developed for combat zone trauma centers. The portable ultrasound and digital documentation equipment she'd utilized allowed real-time transmission of medical data to surgeons at Landstuhl, enabling remote guidance that had saved both SEALs' lives. This technology, now standard in special operations medical protocols, revolutionized battlefield emergency care. Lisa nodded slowly. "But you're investigating now. By revealing yourself yesterday, by using those call signs, you've broken your agreement. They'll come for you." Rachel smiled, but it held no warmth. "Let them come. I've spent 3 years pretending to be less than I am, hiding, playing small. Yesterday reminded me who I really am, what I'm capable of." She turned to face Lisa fully. "But why do you care? What's your stake in this?" "My brother was Ghost 9, Lisa said quietly. "He didn't make it out of that compound. They gave us a flag and a story about a training accident. Mom still thinks he died because of equipment failure." Her voice hardened. "I've spent 2 years putting pieces together, waiting for one of you to surface. When your assignment came through, when I saw certain anomalies in your file, I hoped, and yesterday confirmed it, and the sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both freeze. Too heavy for one person. Multiple contacts moving with tactical precision. Rachel pushed Lisa behind a file cabinet and positioned herself with clear sight lines to both the stairs and a ventilation grate that might serve as an escape route. Old habits, never truly buried, just dormant. The first figure appeared, weapon at the ready, and Rachel's tension eased fractionally. Doc Williams, followed by Rodriguez and 3 other SEALs. They spread out professionally, securing the room before Williams spoke. Figured we'd find you here. Jenkins saw you heading this way. This is a private conversation, Rachel said, but there was no real heat in it. These men had earned certain truths. Williams holstered his weapon. Not anymore. It's not. You saved our asses yesterday. That makes your problems our problems. He looked around the basement, taking in the photographs, the documents. Jesus, this is about the ghosts, isn't it? The unit that got wiped out 3 years ago. Rodriguez moved closer to the photographs, studying them with professional interest. Except they didn't all get wiped out. You're proof of that. He turned to Rachel. So, what really happened? Before she could answer, another voice came from the stairs. What happened was a black operation that went exactly as planned. They all spun towards the new arrival, a man in civilian clothes. But his bearing screamed military, high-ranking military. He descended slowly, hands visible, but radiating the confidence of someone who didn't need weapons to be dangerous. Sergeant Cooper, or should I say Ghost 71, you've been a hard woman to find. Rachel recognized him now. General Thomas Morrison, Deputy Director of Special Operations Command. The man who had signed off on Operation Twilight Hammer. The man who'd sent her unit to die. General! Her voice was steady, despite the rage building in her chest. Come to finish what you started? Morrison smiled, cold and sharp. On the contrary, I came to thank you. Your performance yesterday, broadcast across tactical nets, recorded by multiple units. You've given me exactly what I needed. He gestured at the basement's contents. All of this, the investigation, it's exactly what we hoped would happen when we kept some of you alive. The room erupted. Williams and Rodriguez moved to flank Rachel, their loyalty to her overriding years of military conditioning. The other SEALs looked confused, but followed their senior NCO's lead. Lisa emerged from behind the cabinet, her hand resting on a sidearm Rachel hadn't known she carried. You wanted us to investigate? Rachel's mind raced, piecing together 3 years of subterfuge. You wanted us to surface. Why? Because the real traitors are still out there, Morrison said simply. The ones who actually betrayed your unit, who have been selling operational intelligence to the highest bidder. We needed bait. Ghosts who were supposedly dead, but might surface if pressed. Ghosts who would draw the traitors out. He pulled out a tablet showing satellite imagery of the ambush site from yesterday. Your convoy wasn't randomly attacked. The route, the timing, the forces arrayed against you, all of it was orchestrated. Someone wanted to confirm if Ghost 71 was really Rachel Cooper. And now they know. You used me as bait? Rachel's voice was dangerously quiet. Used all of us? Morrison shrugged. You volunteered for hazardous duty the day you joined the military. This is just another form of service. He looked at the SEALs. All of you are now part of this, whether you want to be or not. The people hunting the ghosts don't care about collateral damage. So what now? Rodriguez asked, his hand resting on his weapon. We just wait for these traitors to come kill us? Morrison smiled again, and this time it held a hint of genuine warmth. No, Master Chief. Now we hunt. The ghosts are being reactivated, unofficially, of course. Sergeant Cooper's spectacular display yesterday has forced our enemies to move. They'll try to eliminate her before she can connect with other survivors, but they don't know she's not alone anymore. He looked at each of them in turn. You want the truth about what happened? Help us find it. You want justice for the ghosts who died? Help us deliver it. And if we refuse? Williams asked. Morrison shrugged. Then you go back to your lives, pretend this never happened, and hope the people hunting ghosts don't decide you know too much. The basement fell silent, except for the hum of ventilation and the distant sound of helicopter rotors. Rachel looked at the men who had gone from tormentors to protectors in the span of a single firefight, saw the decision in their eyes before they spoke. We're in, Rodriguez said simply. The others nodded agreement. Morrison turned to Lisa. It's Corporal Park. Your investigation has been noted. Your brother would be proud. Consider yourself recruited. Finally, he faced Rachel. Ghost 71. Your official death is being reversed. Your team needs you. Your country needs you. Will you answer the call? Rachel thought of 3 years of hiding, of pretending to be less than she was, of the 7 ghosts who died that night, and the ones still out there, scattered and alone, of the traitors who'd sold them out and were still free. Her decision was made before he finished speaking. When do we start? Morrison checked his watch. Transport arrives in 6 hours. Collect your gear. Say your goodbyes. You're going dark. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sergeant, Lieutenant Steele is asking for you. Might want to handle that before you disappear again. After Morrison left, the basement erupted in questions and planning, but Rachel slipped away, leaving the others to process what they had learned. She had one last duty to perform. The hospital was quieter now. Most of the critical cases stabilized. She found Steele in a private room, his massive frame looking somehow diminished by the machines keeping him alive. His eyes opened as she entered, focusing with effort. Cooper. His voice was weak but clear. They said I died twice on the table, that your field surgery was the only thing that kept me stable enough to survive. Rachel pulled a chair close to his bed. You're tough to kill, Lieutenant. Too stubborn to die. He attempted a laugh that turned into a cough. Yeah, well, I owe you more than my life. I owe you an apology, a real one. His eyes, those same eyes that had blazed with contempt just 24 hours ago, now held genuine remorse. I was wrong about everything. You're more warrior than I'll ever be. You don't know that, Rachel said quietly. But Steele shook his head. I heard the comms. Ghost 71. I know what that means, what that unit was. He struggled to sit up straighter. My uncle was special operations. He told me stories, said the ghosts were the best we had, said losing them was like cutting off our own sword hand. He met her eyes. I'm sorry for everything, and I'm honored to have served with you, even if I was too stupid to know it at the time. Rachel felt something ease in her chest, a knot she hadn't realized was there. We all have our ghosts, Lieutenant. The trick is learning to live with them. She stood to leave, but his hand caught hers. Will I see you again? There was something almost vulnerable in his voice. I mean, the team. We could use someone like you. She squeezed his hand gently. Take care of yourself, Steele. Take care of the team. And remember, real strength isn't about size or strength or how loud you can yell. It's about being willing to bleed for the person next to you, even when they don't deserve it. She left him there, staring after her with eyes full of questions she couldn't answer. In 6 hours, she'd vanish again, become a ghost once more. But this time, she wouldn't be alone. This time, she'd be hunting. The morning sun was just breaking over the mountains as Rachel stood on the flight line, her gear packed, her new identity documents in hand. The SEALs who had volunteered stood with her, a small band of brothers forged in fire and bound by secrets. Lisa was there too, her brother's dog tags visible around her neck. "So, what do we call you now?" Jenkins asked. "Cooper, Ghost 71, something else?" Rachel considered the question as a black helicopter appeared on the horizon. No markings, no identification. "Call me what I've always been," she said finally. "A warrior who keeps her promises." The helicopter touched down, and they boarded in silence. As it lifted off, Rachel took one last look at Phoebe Chapman, at the place where she'd been broken and reborn. Below, she could see Building 3, its secrets now part of a larger web of lies and truth. But then something caught her eye. A figure on the roof of the Tactical Operations Center, watching the helicopter leave. The distance was too great to make out features, but something about the stance, another ghost, or one of the traitors Morrison had warned about. She filed the image away. Another puzzle piece. The war wasn't over. It had just changed battlefields. As the helicopter banked east toward the rising sun, Rachel felt the weight of her new old identity settling around her like familiar armor. The medic was gone. Ghost 71 was back. And this time, she wasn't running from the shadows. She was becoming them. The radio crackled with encrypted chatter, coordinates, and call signs that officially didn't exist. But one transmission made her blood run cold, a voice she recognized, one that shouldn't have been possible. "Ghost 71, this is Ghost 33. Welcome back to the land of the living. We've been waiting." The transmission cut off, but the implications hung in the air like smoke. More ghosts were out there. The question was, friend or foe? Williams, monitoring the same frequency, looked at her with raised eyebrows. Ghost 33 was reported KIA in Twilight Hammer. Rachel nodded slowly. So was I. Death, it seems, is negotiable in our line of work. She turned to face her new team, these men who'd chosen to follow her into the shadows. Last chance to back out. Where we're going, what we're about to do, there's no coming back from it. Rodriguez spoke for all of them. "We've got your 6, Ghost. Lead the way." The helicopter carried them toward an unrecorded war against enemies without uniforms. For Rachel Cooper, Ghost 71, it felt like coming home. Yesterday's firefight proved what she'd always known. You can't kill what refuses to die. Her fingers found an unexpected note. The ambush was just the beginning. Trust no one. G17. Ghost 17. Another survivor. Another puzzle piece. The game was more complex than even Morrison had revealed. But today, she was airborne, armed, and surrounded by proven warriors. Today, the hunt began. Real warriors are forged in silence, revealed in chaos, and defined by what they do when no one's watching. Sergeant Rachel Cooper's story is a powerful testament to the strength found in resilience and the danger of underestimating others. Mocked as just a medic and humiliated by her SEAL team, Rachel faced relentless scorn, her small stature and quiet demeanor dismissed as weakness. Yet, in the crucible of an Afghan ambush, she revealed her true identity as Ghost 71, a warrior of unparalleled skill who saved her tormentors, including Lieutenant Steele, with extraordinary courage and medical expertise under fire. This tale teaches us a profound lesson. Never judge someone by their appearance or perceived limitations. Beneath the surface of those we overlook, whether a quiet coworker, a struggling friend, or even ourselves in moments of doubt, lies untapped strength, forged through unseen battles. Rachel's choice to save those who wronged her, driven by duty rather than vengeance, stirs a deep emotional chord. True heroism is selfless, rising above personal pain to uphold a greater purpose. Her journey challenges us to look beyond snap judgments, to offer empathy instead of criticism, and to recognize that everyone carries hidden scars and stories. In a world quick to label and dismiss, Rachel's transformation from pariah to savior reminds us that compassion and understanding can bridge divides and heal wounds. What's a moment you misjudged someone, only to discover their strength? Share your story in the comments below. Your reflections keep these lessons alive. If Rachel's courage moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of unsung heroes, and ring the bell to never miss an inspiring tale. Let's honor the warriors among us by amplifying their voices together.